Awesome. Well, good morning. Thank you so much for joining this morning. It's wonderful to see all of you here this morning to share in Davines Color Families. So there's a good sized group, a smaller group, but a good sized group of 8 people. So I'm going to give you an overview of what we're going to cover today, and then feel free to add into the group chat if there's something that you wanted to have extra focus on. But of course, along the way, feel free to ask questions or to add into the group chat as well. My name is Jessica, and I'm based out of Vancouver, Canada. I know there are sometimes people that attend from all across North America, so welcome to all of you. And I hope that you're all safe and doing well back to work. So with that, what we're going to be covering today is basically the positioning of all the different color families that we have to support you. Sometimes I feel like we have certain comfort zones that we get into where we get certain products or, certain ways of doing color that is just how we're going to do it. And I think it's always important to kind of keep evolving and expanding what's possible. When we do that, it keeps things fresh for us behind the chair, but it also ensures that we're growing with our skills and with what we have to offer our clients and guests. So for the starting place, what I would like to say is kind of for me, why Davines Color? I feel like recently, since we've reopened, we've actually had a fairly large number of new salons and new stylists interested in Davines Color. And so I've been curious to ask them too, why Davines Color? Like what makes them interested or intrigued about it? And I think that what people are finding right now is that our choices seem to have more impact on our lives than maybe what we did before. Maybe a few months ago, we didn't really give things a lot of thought. But now I think it's important for us to be considering the fact of what's good for us, what's good for the environment, and as well, what's good for our business. So all of those factors play a strong part. For me, I love supporting and being a part of a family-run company. It means that the values of us are what is most important. Whereas sometimes when you have a big corporation, the big corporation is divided in who they are focusing on because of the fact of there's being shareholders and many different people and investors that they need to keep happy. So with a family-run company, we become the priority, which is very important as being a stylist myself. And so with that as well, Davines is certified as what's considered a B Corporation. It may be a newer word for you, but it's a fairly important word for us to be familiar with. It's a certification that businesses get to prove that they make the world a better place. So it's not a matter of me just saying that I do good things for the world. It's a certification that proves and holds me accountable. So with that, Davines proves that they make the world a better place by how they manufacture their products, the ingredients that are used, offsetting the carbon emissions, and donating money and resources to EPO trees. So there's many different aspects that are supported to ensure that Davines is proving to make the world a better place. Then, of course, performance is going to be incredibly important. So with that, as you can see, there's a few different color families. The quick overview before I go into them all is basically the fact that you're going to have more of what we like to consider our standard color line, which is going to be your permanent color line. So that's what many stylists refer to when they have a client come in and they want to get good solid gray coverage. They're going to go to their permanent color line, and that's going to be our Mask with Vibrochrome. So Mask with Vibrochrome is our permanent line that does have ammonia, but a lower based ammonia. Then the other option in our permanent color lines are going to be what is behind me in the white bottles, which is called a new color. So for some people, having a non-ammonia color line is going to be a support that they prefer to align with, but other people are going to actually like to have both as supports. So there's 2 permanent color lines within Davines, Mask with Vibrochrome and a new color. Then we're going to move into what's considered our demi-permanent line. This is a newer line for us, and it's called View, and that's the one that is right behind me here. And that is going to be more of a gel liquid base that's going to be able to give you beautiful results for toning, refreshing, but also for gentle blending. So with that, you're going to find that it keeps the cuticle closed because it is an acidic base. And so therefore you get extra shine and extra softness. So that's going to be one of the really beautiful supports for us as well. And then we go into what's behind me in the black book, which is called finest pigments. And finest pigments is going to be more of our direct color. So that's going to be your direct color that literally is going to be sitting completely on the surface. And it is going to be higher in naturality, and it's more of a gloss or a glaze. So those are going to be various supports that you have to support you. But of course, we're not going to forget about our bleaching systems. So Century of Light, which is going to be behind me in this other side, has 3 different components. Remembering the fact that as a stylist, when you're lightening hair, there's different situations that you may need it for. So we have one that's called Progress. I always want to remind myself of thinking of the term progress means to kind of move forward. And so that's going to be more of our strong bleach that's going to get us up to 9 levels of lift, going to be for your foils and your standard behind the chair work. Then there's stylists, and many stylists are involved and enjoying the hair painting and the freestyle. So what we're going to think of is the term liberty. Liberty, aligning with freedom, is going to give you more of that freehand painting bleach, and it is a clay-based bleach. Then there's the term tolerance, which is the 3rd one, and that's going to be more of our oil base, and that one is going to be, that is dermatologically proved and tested to be used on scalp. So you're going to have those 3. Then we will also have a mask with fiberchrome bleach, and we will have a new color bleach, which is non-ammonia. So those are the different color families that we're going to cover today. So hopefully just in that quick overview, you can see where all of those positions would sit for you as a stylist. So when we're behind the chair, what do we find is our primary need and, request from our guests? I'm going to say probably there's 2. One is going to be great coverage, and the other is going to be lightening. So what you're going to find with Davines is that you're going to have strength in both of those. So with that, we'll start with mask with fiberchrome just because that's generally the main line that people start off with. So with mask with fiberchrome, when we talk about great coverage, what I love is the fact that Davines has given us 4 options for great coverage. So you're going to have the very top one, which is going to be your naturals. The second one, which is going to be your natural intense or your double natural. The 3rd one is going to be your natural ash. And the 4th one is going to be your natural warm or your warm naturals. So let's go through why we've made 4 of them as options. Remembering that if our primary focus behind the chair and the request is going to be great coverage, it's important that we have options and opportunities to do different variations. So standard kind of formula when we look at a 1 to 10 for your coverage. The naturals are going to give a beautiful natural coverage. A gentle reminder for all of us that pretty well every single color line out there that's in a professional range is going to give you great coverage. A color line couldn't exist if we didn't get great coverage, because keep in mind the fact that if that's what the primary focus is going to be for the consumers, every line has to do it. So it's going to just be more a matter of what is the finish that you like, but also understanding and educating your client on the finish that they want to see. So with the naturals, the naturals you're going to find is going to be solid coverage, but it is going to be dimensional, meaning it's going to have a very natural finish. Think about a child, and when you see a child's hair in the sunlight, you'll see that it's not flat and it's not kind of like a wig tone. Right? If you look at a wig blonde versus a child's blonde, there's a very different finish in it. So this natural is going to give us solid coverage, but it is going to be dimensional. Then if you want something that is solid coverage, but is something that's going to be more of a denser finish, meaning double the pigment, then you can go into your double naturals. And so that's going to be another option for you. But let's say you were going to do great coverage, but you feel that the person pulls a fair bit of warmth or gold or, kind of unwanted tones, then you also have the opportunity to use natural ash. What if the fact that you had someone that had copper or red hair and still needed to have great coverage? And if you're using something that's more on a natural line, then maybe you feel like you're contradicting what you want the end result to be. So in that case, we have what's considered natural warms. Trying to kind of show them so that you can see the kind of glimmer of warmth in them. So this is different than using just a gold. What this is when we say natural warm, it's basically what your hair color would look like if you were in the sun for 2 weeks. So what I mean is that at a level 4, if you were in the sun for 2 weeks, you're going to see a little bit more of a red tone. And as we move into the 6s, we're going to see a little bit more of the coppers. And as we move into the 8, we're going to see a little more gold. So it's the underlying pigment that's brought forward, but still providing great coverage. Now keep in mind, all of these 4 naturals can be used on their own and not necessarily for great coverage. Or the recommendation is to use at least a third of your mixture in one of those 4 for great coverage. Personally, I like to use 50%. I feel like for me, when I'm doing the math and measuring, it just seems easier. And I just like to be kind of like more solid with having a little bit more natural component in my colors. But that is totally up to you. And the recommended is at least 30% of your mixture. So now I want to show you where those colors sit when we're looking at the color wheel. So the color wheel, what I like about this is it shows not only where the shades are going to sit, the individual colors, but it's also showing the depth going to the center. So when you're looking at this, you're going to see that the naturals and the double naturals are going to sit primarily in the blue range, which means the naturals are going to have your 3 primary colors, your red, your blue, and your yellow. But naturally, blue is going to have a stronger component just because it has more depth to it. So great thing is that you're not going to pull any unwanted shades when you're doing great coverage. Our double natural or natural intense also sits in the blue range. And then when we start moving into the ash, which is a 0.1, it is going to be still in the blue, but moving a little bit more over towards the violet. Then when we look at our natural warms, you're going to see where they're going to sit, and they're going to sit a little bit more in kind of the warmer side of it. So with that, now we're going to have our 4 options for great coverage. Then you'll see a little swatch here that has a 3, a 5, and a 7. What this is this is to determine which percentage if you have 50% of gray hair. So sometimes when we look at a level 3, we often think it's lighter than it is because of the fact that the gray, 50% gray, kind of lightens the end result. Or when we think of a 5 or a 7. So this is going to help you know what level it is, but also if there is 50% gray. So that is going to be more of a tool to support you. So when you look at this, you're going to see that the 0.0 is going to be your natural. The double 0.0 is your double natural. Your 0.1 is your natural ash. And then the ones that don't have a point afterwards are going to be your natural warm. So important that you remember that, because when we look at the boxes really quickly, you don't want to be pulling one that is going to be thinking that this is a 6 natural when it is a natural warm. And so that's what they're going to look like when you're looking at the differences between all of them. I'm going to cover another reason for why Davines when we get to the packaging, but we'll come back to that in a few minutes. So with that, let's go through how does the color wheel work for all of the various colors and for the various numbers. Depending on what line you've worked with in the past, it could be a variation. So as we said, 0.0 is going to be our sitting in our natural. Our 0.1 is going to be sitting in the blue. So it's a blue ash. 0.2 is going to be what is going to be considered a violet or iris. 0.3 is going to be a gold. 0.4 is going to be a copper. 0.5 is going to be a mahogany, which is sitting in here between the red and the violet. 0.6 is going to be a red, and 0.7 is going to be a beige, which is a green yellow. For me personally, the beiges are absolute must. So anytime I see a 0.7, I know that it's going to be a stunning shade for us within Davines. And then 0.8 is going to be an ash green. I'm sorry, I almost forgot that one. So with that, now when you see the first number, it's telling you how dark the hair is. So the 1 is going to be the depth of my hair, and a 10 is going to be the lightest blonde. And then after that, you're going to see what the reflex are, which are going to match what's on this. This little chart that you'll see within the swatch book is going to be an incredible resource. It's going to have all of the mixing ratios and everything that you could possibly need for mixing and working with Davines Mask with Fiberchrome. So now that we've covered the different naturals, remembering the fact that every line is going to give you great coverage, but it's a matter of what kind of coverage you want. So if you want something that's more denser, more kind of like, I like to say, like when we look at the first naturals, this is just like wearing regular tights. Whereas when we think of this double naturals, it's almost like wearing leggings. So the tights, you still can see some skin through it, whereas the leggings, you can't see anything through it. Most of the people that are getting great coverage, you're going to find are going to have a variation in how often they come in. So if you have a clientele that's coming in quite regularly, then I recommend going as solid or with a regular natural as you like. For me personally, I've always been happy to have and use the regular naturals, even with as dark as my hair is. But my hair is a finer texture, which means a finer texture is not going to need as much support for getting great coverage as sometimes more of the thicker, coarser, wiry hair. But also, hair can be more compact, which makes it more resistant. So depending on it, you will determine which great coverage you're going to want to use. But if people are not going to get their hair colored as often, I tend to make sure that I do go in for sure with the naturals and not the double natural, because the double natural or natural intense, people may call it, is going to give a more intense line of regrowth and not have as soft a blend. So again, it's more a matter of the finish that people are going to want. So you determine which natural is going to be what you want to use for your gray coverage in each person. So if all of us on this call, so there's 10 of us on the call now, if we were all going to go get a morning drink, a coffee or a tea, my guess is that we're all going to have something slightly different. Just like our hair is going to be different, the products are going to be different, the color is different, the texture is different. So then it's a good reminder for us to think about the fact that we shouldn't just be mixing 6.0 and 20 volume on everyone, because that's just like saying everyone's coffee should have a little bit of cream and sugar, or everyone's coffee should be black, when we all have personal preferences. I think what can happen for us is that we hear terms like, I don't want warmth, or I don't want gold, or red. But that's because people have had a experience that maybe was in the extreme. And so from there, we start kind of taking that on and not allowing people to have the beautiful shades that there are to offer. So with that, we're going to go into what's considered the reflex in the chart. So when you open up the swatch book, you're going to see this is the opening, that you're going to have the gray coverage as well as the gray coverage identifier. And then you're going to go into this back portion where you would have the guide that we just shared with us, the color wheel and the information. And now here you're going to have the various different reflect booklets. So with this, we're going to go now through what we have for brown options. So these are going to be sitting in browns, but all different levels. So let's talk about how do the reflex work. So when we look at these browns, and then we have the reds and we have the golds, the beautiful thing about all of these is that they are going to have the depth of each level, meaning there's going to be colors that are going to be for a level 2 or a level 6 or a level 7. All of the levels, even a level 10, are going to be covered, but they do not have 50% natural in these reflex. So some lines put 50% natural in, or a large component of natural before having the reflex. Let's talk about why that would be good, or maybe why that would not be good for us as stylists. For me personally, I prefer to have it how Davines has it, where it is not 50% natural in our reflex. And that's because if I want to use ash, I want the ash to be ash so that it can control what it is that I don't want to see in my color or in my hair. If I want to have red, then I want the red to be red and vibrant as opposed to having 50% natural, which could brown it out. So where that you can see that happen is that if I were to mix a regrowth formula in another color line that had the 50% natural, when I would go to pull it through to the ends would potentially brown out because I'm putting brown in the mixture. Whereas when we're using the reflex from Davines, they are primarily the reflex that you will see here, which means if you want to add brown, you add one of those naturals. Otherwise, you have the vibrancy and the color exactly as you are. So if you don't have great coverage issues, you can use these straight out of the tube. If you have great coverage issues, then you're going to make sure that you're going to use one of those four mixed potentially with these, or of course you can use those just on their own. So let's go through this. We're going to see that the 0.3 is going to be our golds. And then, for example, there's a 4.43, remembering that our 4 is copper and our 3 is gold. Then you're going to have a 7.3. A 7 is going to be a beige and a 3 is going to be a gold. So now the question is, what percentage is the 0.7 to the 3? So it is a primary reflect, the 7, meaning the beige, and a secondary reflect, meaning the gold. So the primary is going to be the beige with just a little bit of gold. And so why we can't say what percentage is that, again, if we put blue, red, and yellow, the same drop in a bowl, which color of that would be dominant or controlling of all of them? It would be the blue, because blue is going to be deeper and darker. So in this case, if you had a blue as your first reflect and a gold as your second reflect, the gold wouldn't even show up. So that's why it depends on what the color is, what the percentage is. But to our eye, visually, it will always be primary and secondary. And what the chemists have to do behind the scenes is going to be up to them. But that's why it's not the same mixture for each one. It will vary depending on what the end result is. So some of our signature colors that we have that I know people love to use are going to be our 1,4s. That's going to be our ash copper. So people will often ask me, well, ash is going to be your blue and copper is going to be your more of your, kind of like orangey copper tone. So it's like, doesn't that zero each other out, like neutralize each other out? So what happens is the color molecules or pigments sit beside each other so that they give that beautiful reflect. So almost imagining like a chandelier, and you see the primary one is going to be blue with a little bit of copper sparkle. So it's in a sense a very like chocolatey color. So the 1,4 is going to be your ash copper. That's going to be very, very rich, primarily cool with a little bit of copper. So it just gives a beautiful natural coverage to people. So again, if you had great coverage, you would use around 1/3 or 1/2 of your formula to be in one of those naturals that we covered in the beginning, and the rest of your formula to be in the 1,4s. The other one that's beautiful is 1,5. So that's going to be an ash, meaning a blue, with a mahogany, meaning the 5. And then we can go again to the 7.3s. So that's going to be your beige gold. So again, thinking of the fact of remembering that when we personalize colors, it makes it harder for people to want to do something on their own, but it also makes it about them. It makes it special and unique for them, as opposed to just making it where everyone has the same mixture no matter what. So when you go to mix a color the next time and it just seems a little too standard or basic, think about how can you make it a little more personalized for that person and make it so that they have that special relationship with you where you've created something that is unique for them to support their needs and what they would like to see their hair looking like. The nice thing about these swatches is that you can let your client see them because there's no names and they're not going to know what the numbers are. So someone may tell you, I absolutely hate anything that has to do with gold. And then they go and they pick this one. And it's actually not showing up that well. That's better, I think. So that one, as you can see there, is a level 6 and it's a 3-5. So a 3 is a gold and a 5 is a mahogany. But depending on how that looks, sorry, my lighting is being kind of funny on me today. But as you can see how that looks, like depending, someone may not see that as gold. They may see gold as yellow. So letting people be the deciding factor of what their version of the color is and you supporting them with it. So hopefully you can find some great supports in using the color and the gray coverage support with the reflex. Now let's move to the reds. Actually, I should go back again to that booklet because it has more of our ash and I don't want to forget about them. We have a level 381. That means it is a green blue. So when you have people with dark hair like mine or different ethnicities where it's quite dark naturally and it can be quite resistant, when we go to lighten our types of hair, we'll find that we pull a fair bit of red. And then of course it goes into more of the coppers and the oranges and the yellows. So the great thing is to have something that is more of a green blue base, which is going to be incredible for controlling. We also have a 1-8 in a level 4 and in a level 6, and we have a 1-1 in a level 5. So these are going to be incredible supports, and remembering that they are primarily that color and not having a lot of brown in them. So when you think of the 5 is telling you how dark it is, but not that it's all a natural 5. So if you want to add a natural 5, then you go ahead and you add the natural 5 to it. But if you want to have all of that control, then you go ahead and use these straight as is. And that's why when you're doing great coverage, you need to use one of those 4 because that brown factor is not put into these. Hopefully that makes sense for you and you can kind of find some new excitement with how to mix your colors to make them personalized, but also to give incredible great coverage with different options. So now moving to the reds, as you're going to see, our reds and our coppers and our mahoganies are going to have lots of different options that you can see in here. So with this, when we think about how our reds work, our reds are going to be great for the fact, again, that there is not all of that brown in there. So sometimes people find that they're trying to create that beautiful natural color red or that beautiful copper, but it can feel like it's too murky or it can feel like it's too fluorescent. So the beautiful thing is that we have lots of different options for this. And if you want to be adding the natural, you add the natural in or the natural warm, as we discussed earlier, the benefits of this version, or you can just use them straight as is. Now let's move into our blondes. Our blondes are going to be a beautiful, beautiful support for you. The nice thing about these blondes is that you can use them to lighten hair, or you can use them for toning, because you're going to have various different supports within this. When we look about our activators and mask with fiberchrome are going to give us a few different options. We're going to have everything from a 5, which is going to give kind of a little more of that demi finish. Our 10 is going to give us more of our deposit. Our 20 is going to give us our great coverage and potentially 1 level of lift. Our 30 is going to give us 2 levels of lift. Our 40 is going to give us 3 levels of lift. So the easy way to remember it is if the number is 4, the levels of lift is 1 less. So 40 you get 3 levels of lift, 30 you get 2, 20 you get 1, and 10 is going to be your straight deposit. So the timing of these for our mask with fiberchrome is always going to be 35 minutes. But remembering the texture of hair, the finer texture of hair is going to be thinner like a piece of thread, and thicker and coarser and wiry hair is going to be more like a piece of rope. So the time for penetration to allow the color and to dissolve the natural melanin in the hair may vary depending on the texture. So if you ever have really coarse wiry hair or compact hair where it just is so shiny and the hair shaft itself is almost like tight, then feel free to leave it on an extra 5 minutes if that's what you need. And that's not a Davines thing. That is actually something to remember for coloring in general, is that consider the texture of hair and know if it needs more time because it needs to go the deeper distance. Then when it comes to mixing is a great support within Davines with mask with fiberchrome, because you're going to find that the tube size is larger, meaning 100 mils. So it's a larger size tube, and the mixing will be 1 part of your color to 1.5 parts of your activator. So what does that look like? That looks like, say, 20 grams of color. And if it's 1.5, then you take the 20 and half of that is 10. So it'd be 20 grams of color to 30 grams of activator. So I try to keep my math as simple as possible so that it doesn't get me confused when I'm thinking of formulations. So for example, 30 grams of color, if we take 1 and 1.5, that means it's 30, and half of 30 is 15. So that means it's 45. So fairly simple and straightforward, but it allows your tubes of color to last you longer. And the larger tube is also going to be a support that way. So mixing is 1 to 1.5. The times that are going to be different and the mixing ratios that are going to be different are going to be when you're looking at your 5 volume or your 40. So I kind of make it like bookends. So you've got your 5 and you've got your 40, but everything else in between is the same mixing ratio and same timing. The 5 is going to be a 1 to 2 mixing ratio, and the 40, when using with a high lift, is going to be a 1 to 2 mixing ratio. So those will both be different mixing ratios. Then the timing is also different. When you're using a 5 volume, it can be anything from a few minutes to 20. When we're working with the high lift, you're sitting kind of in that 50 to potentially up to an hour. So kind of in that range of 50 minutes to an hour. So now we'll go through what the different shades are with blonde to kind of help support how you're going to do your mixing ratio and your timing. So beautiful shades, of course, most people are familiar with the fact of something like a 922, a 9 violet violet. It's kind of a dream come true because most of the times when we get to a level 9, we tend to pull a fair bit of gold. So the violet is going to be a great control. But again, if you need more control, there's going to be a 911. There's also going to be a 918. So using green when we're working with blondes can be an incredible support when we're trying to get more control. Then don't forget, we talked about our 7s, our beiges. The 872 is a beautiful shade as well. And then we have a 978, a 927, remembering that the 2 is going to be a violet and the 7 is a beige. So really any beautiful shade that you may require for toning can also be a support within here or for lightening. So when we talk about toning, what you do want to remember is that toning with, say, View versus toning with Mask. Toning with Mask with Fiberchrome, it is a permanent color line, which means the color molecule will sit deeper in the hair shaft. When you look at a demi-permanent line, the color molecule sits on the surface, and it is acidic, which holds the hair shaft and the color closed. So if you do need to shift the color further, or you want to have deeper penetration, going with Mask with Fiberchrome for toning can be incredible. But then you have to remember that there is ammonia in the tube. So if you have a level 7 and you've created some highlights and now we're toning, what potentially can happen is that the ammonia in the tube could shift your level 7 to make it warmer. Some people really like that. They may call it shifting the base. But if you don't want to shift the base, you do need to be aware of it and either mix it and let the ammonia burn off in the bowl for a bit, or you may need to go straight to View and not use the Mask with Fiberchrome. So you do have options in that depending on the type of support that you're requiring for your toning. Then we have our high lifts. Our high lifts are incredible because they can give us up to 5 levels of lift. There's extra ammonia in this, and they do give you incredible brightness and vibrancy and control. To get them to look this color, you pretty well need to be starting with basically a level 8 hair. So this is not going to be something that we're referring to for visuals as much as we're referring to what's in the tube. So you could have a level 6 or even a level 5, and if we used, say, a 1-8, remember that's a blue-green, on a level 5, getting 5 levels, I mean, it's not going to go quite to a 10, but you're going to get some incredible lift, but it's going to go more of sitting in that kind of like beigey caramel color without having to do a bleach and tone. So you'll find that these are going to be incredible supports for you as long as you remember kind of how they are working. So this is going to be your options for blondes. So now, as you can see, we have 3 different booklets, which are your reflex that you can work with Mask with Fiberchrome, as well as your page with your gray coverage. So again, 4 options of gray coverage, your 3 options for your booklets with your different reflex, And then on the back here, you're going to see we have a 000 booster and we have intensifiers. So let's refer to the intensifiers on the color wheel so that it helps us know where they sit. So when we look at the intensifiers, you're going to see that you're going to have your 1-8 is going to be here, which is going to be more of a bluey green. And you're going to have your 1-2, which is going to be your violet. And then here you're going to have your 2-5, which is your violet kind of moving into mahogany, and your 6-6, which is going to be your red. So these are beautiful for supporting, meaning you want extra of any of those shades. What's important to remember is that with the intensifiers, they do have ammonia in their tube. So some lines, when you're mixing an intensifier, you mix it in addition, meaning you mix up your formula and then you add the intensifier. The intensifiers here, because they have ammonia, they need to be mixed as part of your formula. So what I'm meaning is that before you add your activator, you add your intensifier, and that becomes part of your formula that you're measuring your activator with. So for example, if you had 20 grams of color, and then you had 5 grams of an intensifier, that's 25 grams that you're then mixing your activator with, not based on the 20. So it does act as part of your color, and it can be used on its own as a fashion color. So now what about the 000 booster? Because that one looked a little bit unique for some people probably to see. So the 000 booster is a color that has ammonia but doesn't have any pigment to it. So why would you want something like that? Well, the great thing is it gives you the ability to get one extra level of lift. So if when we're working with 40 volume, we're only able to get the 3 levels, if you're needing to get extra lift out of a color, then you have the ability to use the 000 booster. Remembering the fact though, that because it doesn't have any pigment, it is not going to be ideal for gray coverage. And if you're wanting a lot of control, you may need to use an intensifier or one of the shades that has more control to it. So it's kind of an artist tool, but it's a great one for shifting the base or getting extra level or kind of almost creating a shade that doesn't exist that you may want. So with that, you can see the benefits of Mask with Fiberchrome. So if I were to share why Mask with Fiberchrome, I'm going to tell you it's a beautiful line that has 4 options for gray coverage. The reflex are primarily the reflect, which means you can get great gray coverage by adding the naturals in, but you can also have great control with the ashes, incredible vibrancy with the reds, and you have some great options for blondes, including incredible high lifts. Then you have intensifiers as well as a 000 booster. So then you're going to also have 5 different activators that you can choose from. The 5, which is going to be a demi-semi finish. Then you're going to have the 10, which is your deposit, your 20 volume, which is your gray coverage or 1 level of lift, your 30, which is 2 levels of lift, and your 40, which is 3 levels of lift. So within that, now what else makes that line unique? Well, the primary focus in the line is going to be the fact that it is based with quinoa protein. So our hair is mainly made up of or comprised of protein. So what's the best way to be able to support the structure of the hair while you're changing the color is to add more protein. So quinoa protein is going to give you the support that the hair needs, but also the longevity. The next thing is knowing the fact that Davines makes color products and skincare. We use omega-9s, and omega-9s are going to be very gentle for the scalp, but also soft and shiny for the hair. So this is going to also give us the great vibrancy and softness. Then there's what's called the phospholipid carrier. The phospholipid carrier is what's used in the silk and garment industry, and it's what allows the pigments to be able to penetrate into, say, the fabric, but in a very, very gentle way without exposing so much. So what you'd find is that sometimes if you open up the cuticle so much, and then you try to close it, either the texture feels rough or the pigments don't have the ability to stay in for a long time. So the phospholipid carrier is a lubricant, which means it allows it to slide in and help and assist the color pigments. So with that, those 3 supports are going to give us extra shine, extra longevity, extra softness, and also the protection that the hair needs. So you're going to have the omega-9s, the phospholipid carrier, and the quinoa protein. With the quinoa protein, we have a relationship with the farmer in South America so that we know where the ingredients are coming from, but we also know that the people that work in the farm are being treated with utmost care and respect. And so these are going to be important values for us within Davines. It's pretty amazing to think about the fact that all of the ingredients can have the ability and do have the ability to know where they're coming from, but also that they have a specific performance base. Because our values are to be sustainable, we don't want to use natural ingredients if they don't have the ability to improve the quality of skin or hair. So these are going to be important factors for us. And then remembering the fact that you're supporting a B corporation, which means it's a certification to prove that the business is making the world better. So for the end consumer, I think it would be great for them to know that you're using a line like this that supports the environment, but also supports the globe and uses natural ingredients whenever possible. So, and using a lower based ammonia line so that you can get the same results without using as much of the toxic chemicals. So that's going to be how the Mask with Fiberchrome line works. When you look at the imagery, what's quite beautiful about it is the fact that this is something that different artists and people that have worked around the world submitted black and white photos that were then used for our color line. So what you can see here is you're going to see each of the different images are from different people that submitted. So it's a support that then when you read the back, it tells you who took the picture and where they're from. So it's a way to bring our community of hairstylists together. The paper itself is what's called FSC paper. That's paper that was planted with this specific purpose in mind. So I said paper, but I guess I'm meaning trees. Trees were planted for the specific purpose of making this paper, and this paper is for these packages. So also vegetable-based ink, water-soluble glues, and the aluminum tubes are completely recyclable. So it's a great support when we think of sustainability, and also knowing the fact that when we're disposing of color, if you don't use Green Circle, which is going to be an incredible support because the color waste can be taken. If you don't, it is best to put the color waste down the drain, and then, not down the drain. Oh my gosh, silly me. Not down the drain, because putting it into the garbage and into the soil becomes a filter for the water. So definitely not down the drain is the better approach, but Green Circle will take your color back if that's an option for you and for your salon. So that's going to be your Mask with Fiberchrome, which is your beautiful support line. It is a lower based ammonia with lots of options for gray coverage, an incredible artist tool, and tons of different supports from control to vibrancy. So now let's think about how and why would we want a non-ammonia line such as a new color. So that's going to be the line here. The nice thing about this is that when we think about ammonia, ammonia is a gas, which means it evaporates into the environment. A non-ammonia line is not going to evaporate into the environment. So why would that be something of support for you? Depending on the size of the space, ammonia evaporating into the environment could feel overwhelming. So something with a lower or non-ammonia is going to be ideal. The other thing is that the finish is different. The finish in the color almost has more of a denser velvety finish, whereas Mask with Fiberchrome is more of a silk finish. So it's kind of more silky satin, so it's kind of a lighter, airier, dimensional, whereas the new color is going to be denser and having more solid, kind of a velvety finish to it. Of course, when you think about the color wheel is going to be very, very similar, except for the fact that in a new color, the line itself is a little bit more on the violet base, whereas a Mask with Fiberchrome is going to be sitting a little more with a blue baseline. Then what you're going to consider is that the numbers are a little bit different. So when we're working through the color wheel, it's not going to have an 8. So the 1 is going to be a little bit more of a greeny blue, ash, and you're not going to have the straight 8 sitting there. The rest of the colors are going to be the same for the number system. So it's fairly straightforward. The other thing with a new color is that you can use any tube straight out of the tube, or any color straight out of the tube for great coverage, meaning you don't need to use the naturals or the double naturals for great coverage. Personally, I still always like to use a little bit in there because I do like to feel like I have that more dense coverage, but as a rule, you do not have to. The other support, and we're thinking of a new color, is the fact that there are pure colors, meaning that you're going to have red and orange and yellow and green and blue and violet. So these are going to be more fashion colors that you have the ability to use whenever you want to create more of a fashion color. It is going to be best to use on pre-lightened hair, and remembering the fact that when we lighten hair, we tend to have, porosity situations. So it is going to be a little different determining. It's not always as straightforward as, it's this color blonde and you have the certain longevity. You have to remember what is the strength of the hair. If you're ever running into issues that way, and one of the best supports I can recommend is the nourishing line within Natural Tech, because you do have the support of the vegetable keratin to help rebuild and strengthen the hair, which allows the color pigments to have more longevity. So having people use that or using that as a treatment is going to be a great support for you. So with that, there's also a 000 booster in a new color. One of the great things that I love about it is that the 000 booster in a new color can lift cosmetic hair by 1 to 2 levels. So it gives you the ability to just shift the natural or cosmetic color out of the hair. So it is going to be a special tool that way. For me, when a new color first came out, I did use it solely on its own for about 6 to 8 months. I loved it. The finish was beautiful. Clients loved it. The experience was amazing. And for some people, as they age or as they've had more exposure to ammonia, they can build up an intolerance, which means sometimes having a shift. But the other thing is I just liked using it because it was a different finish. It had a different velvety finish. And by it being a slightly different base, having more of a violet base than having more of a blue base, you just get a different visual to it. The reds, thinking of if there's a violet base, have more of a violety red feeling. Whereas when we look at more of a blue base, it changes the way that looks. And again, it's just having different options. I know one of my favorites within a new color is an 872. The 872 almost just creates that perfect natural level 8. So for color correction, I absolutely adore and do adore using a new color. So it is an incredible support for you, and everyone has their personal preferences, but I think that it's worth to use both to give yourself the options depending on who your clients are. And remembering again, like our hair being different, our coffee or our tea requests are different, it's good to have as many options as possible. And so when we look at how do you work the mixing and everything with a new color, the nice thing is the timing is the same. It's 35 minutes for your timing, so that's going to make it easy that way for you, but also knowing the fact of how you're going to get the mixing to happen. So you're going to have your activator. The 5 solely is going to be for the pure colors. So that will be for the reds, the blues, the greens, the yellow coppers, all of those. So that's what you're going to use the 5. But the rest of it, the 10, the 20, the 30, and the 40, are going to be mixed with the color tubes and are going to be used with the cream base. So how you mix it is you mix 1 part of your color. So 1 part of your color to 1 part of your cream base to 2 parts of your activator. So how that would look like is 15 grams, 15 grams, and 30 grams of your activator. So people want to know, why do we have a cream base? What is the reason, and what is the performance factor? The cream base is an extra alkaline ingredient. This extra alkaline ingredient gives the non-ammonia color line the ability to give us extra lift but extra great coverage. So it's an important part of our line. We couldn't add this, which is the metasilicate, which is in here, to the tubes of color, or it would have burned itself off within a time frame. So it's important to know the fact that you have to use this in as a third step. So color tube, cream base, and your activator are all part of the mixing ratio. The color base itself is going to have different vegetable-based color pigments to it. Carotenoids and melanin. Carotenoids thinking of coming from carrots to create more of the orangey coppers, and melanin more of the dates and kind of more of the bluey reds. So that's where we're going to have our natural pigment base from. And then you're going to have your metasilicate, which actually comes from quartz crystal. Thinking of quartz crystal, how shiny and sparkly is that? So you have an extra shimmer factor, higher reflection than diamonds, meaning higher shine than diamonds in quartz crystal, as well as the extra alkaline, and that's going to give us more lift and more gray coverage. And then, of course, working with the activators. So again, timing is going to be very similar, 35 minutes or the same. The mixing ratio is slightly different. And then when we look at the finish, more velvety and more silk or satin. So again, just a different finish. Different people like a different finish and they have different needs. So again, someone may like caffeine, someone may want something that is non-caffeinated, and it's really up to you how you want to work, how you want to work that. So now let's go to our View, which is our demi-permanent line. This is a line that I absolutely adore. It is newer for us, and I love the fact of having more of a gel-based line that's going to give us the ability to give us beautiful finish, but also beautiful viscosity to be able to pull through. We're going to be using in the View line the same kind of number system that we're working with Mask with Fiberchrome and the same activators. As you can see here, it is a 10 volume activator that you're using. So you're going to be mixing 1 part color to 1 part 10 volume activator. And ideally, the quick and easy way to do the application is going to be with the applicator bottle. As you can see here, it's nice because of the way the applicator bottle works. It falls, the color kind of drops down to here, so it's an easy application. With that, there is going to be a gloss that you can use in View. There will also be steel, amethyst, charcoal, and quartz. I was like, what was the last one? Quartz. Those are more fashion shades that you can use in View. Then there's also going to be your blonde shades, 922, 978, 973. And those are going to be beautiful for toning. And then you're going to have some of your darker shades. A 721 is a great root smudge or root drop. So why would you be using View? View is going to be a perfect one for toning because it is going to keep the cuticle closed. It is going to give you more shine and more softness, and it will also allow to have more longevity. Then it also can be a nice support for gray blending, specifically in guys because it cannot break the base of the color. And then your other option is going to be refreshing roots and ends, or mids and ends. So when I do my gray coverage, then for the mids and ends, I like to pull through with View. It makes the hair feel extra soft and extra shiny, and it's not going to be as, much as putting like a permanent color over and over on hair. So for any time you're using gray coverage, definitely use your refreshing for your mids and ends. So if our timing is 20 minutes in View, if you have 35 minutes with your permanent color, after 15 minutes or so, you go and you mix the View and then you pull it through the mids and the ends for the duration of the time. The amount of time, 20 minutes, is really up to you. But my recommendation is to almost think of it as 20 minutes, each minute is equal to a wash. So if you leave a color on for 5 minutes, it's going to be about 5 washes. If you leave it on for 20 minutes, it's about 20 washes. So ideally, the longer it is. This is pretty well the same with most demi-permanent lines. We just sometimes forget it because when our clients leave, we see it looking beautiful. I know people will do that with silver shampoos and conditioners. You use a silver shampoo and a conditioner and your blonde looks beautiful and they leave. Well, in 3 washes, what do you think has happened? That's gone if they're not using it. So it's not about what it looks like when it's leaving the salon. It's like what it's going to have for longevity and ensuring that. I feel like I had a personal experience. I went blonde in the fall. And something that I found really shocking is that I'm in this industry and I share education on a regular basis, but I almost forgot what I am presenting and how I share information. Because after being blonde, I jumped in the shower and I just wanted to wash my hair with everything that I've ever used before. Well, the problem is that I have very, very fine hair and I like to get volume or fullness or texture out of it. But do you want volume or fullness or texture out of blonde hair that came from being a level 1? Probably not. And so I think what we often do when we think of retailing with clients is we feel like we're selling people products, or we feel like they spent all this money getting blonde. But what we're forgetting is the fact that it's just up to us to give them the information and the education that would best support their hair. So If you're going blonde, it's important that they understand that their hair texture has changed. And in that change of hair texture, most of the time people need to use a different shampoo. One that's going to keep the cuticle closed, to keep the toner in longer, one that's going to make the hair softer, and that this is part of that program. And then the same thing, if you're going to use great coverage and you want to have, View used on too, it's important that they're using the products to best support the longevity that they're going to need with the color. So this is going to be standard for any color line, but it's just a gentle reminder that it's not about selling. It's just about making sure that the person understands the process from start to finish and that you've supported them with all the information that they need. Because if you don't, who is going to? So just think of it as if you had your hair done, what would you want to use in it and what makes your hair feel good and not feel like a dandelion where it's all like explosive and textured and frizzy and out of control. So just remembering that people want to use the products that are going to best support their end result of their hair. So now going back to View, keeping in mind that View being a demi-permanent line, it's where it sits. So if we think of there's almost like a cup with a cup holder, and that cup with the cup holder is almost equivalent to how our hair shaft is. When we think of the different activators or the different way color sits, permanent color either sits, if we're using a lower activator, it sits more on the surface of the hair. If we say a 20 volume, now we're going in that cup just slightly. 30 volume, we're going in further, and 40 volume, we're going into the center of the cup. Now, if we're thinking of the cup holder, that's where the demi-permanent, meaning View, sits. So it's sitting more on the outside or equivalent to where the hair shaft is. That's a beautiful thing because of the shine and keeping the cuticle closed. But what we have to consider in that factor is that it's sitting almost like a top coat of nail polish. And so sometimes, I know I had a question that came in not that long ago of someone saying, I pre-lightened my hair and I used amethyst. And so amethyst is sitting a little darker than a light blonde. So in a way, it's almost a little bit like a color correction. You'll get a beautiful shade from the amethyst, but you may not get that intense depth and vibrancy because the amethyst is sitting darker than a level 9 and it's sitting like a top coat, like a clear coat. So it's like if I wanted to have my nails looking a dark violet, I'd have to put more than just a sheer coat on it. I'd need to have a violet base with the sheer coat. So again, what is the end result you're looking for and remembering that? So it is better to sit within 1 or 2 levels of the color that you're putting on with the View so that you have that longevity. So again, if your hair is light blonde and you put on a level 4, it's not going to have that depth that you'd get from permanent color because it's a top coat, right? So that's going to be important to remember. One of the beautiful ingredients that we've used when we're using View is going to be olive oil. So you're going to notice that makes the viscosity so soft and so shiny, and it's going to make the hair feel and look incredible. So this is going to be an incredible support for you with your color. Definitely a top seller for us and something that I would encourage you to use on a regular basis. Again, for toning, refreshing mids and ends, but also that gentle gray blending where someone doesn't want to shift their natural base, and specifically in guys, it's a great support. So now we're going to move to our Century of Light, which is going to be our bleaches. So our bleaching system here we will bring forward is going to be Progress, Liberty, and our Tolerance. So with that, our Progress, as I touched on, is going to be progressing. Moving forward is going to give us up to 9 levels of lift. The base of this you are going to see is going to be a violet base. But what's incredible about the Progress and the Liberty is that there is a bond builder built right into our bleaches. So this is going to be an incredible support for us because it's not only protecting the hair, it is going to be restructuring and protecting and rebuilding and restructuring the hair at the same time while you're lightening the hair. Liberty is going to be thinking of freedom. It's going to be your hair painting bleach. So it's going to be a clay-based bleach. When you're working with Liberty, when you look in the container, it's white. So that's going to be a helpful reminder of the Liberty is white and the Progress is violet. When you're thinking of Liberty being a clay-based bleach, the idea is that the surface of the hair is going to be getting covered with the clay-based bleach. But then when the other hair touches, you don't want it to change that. So that almost hardens. If that clay-based bleach, meaning Liberty bleach, hardens but isn't thick enough, it turns into a dust, right, on the ends. The minute it turns into a dust, it stops lightening. So it's that fine line when you're working with a clay-based bleach that you want to have enough saturation that you can get that cover on the edge from the clay, but still that moisture inside to keep lightening the hair. So those are going to be what you see when you're looking at the Liberty and the Progress. Tolerance is going to be our oil-based one, which is dermatologically proved and tested. So that's going to be incredible support for you, meaning the fact that it's meant to be used on scalp. So with that, tolerance, if you wanted to get more than 3 levels, because that's what you'll get, you'd use it with Progress, Progress, which is going to give you 5 levels of lift. So again, Progress and Tolerance together are going to give you 5 levels of lift. So Progress on its own up to 8, Liberty on its own, Progress on its own up to 9, Liberty on its Liberty on its own up to 8, Tolerance on its own up to 3, and Tolerance with Progress together will give you 5. So now you're going to have that incredible support for your lightening and your blonde services that you can use scalp, more of a hair painting, or you can use more of your workhorse to get all of your foils and your lightening done. Then, of course, there is a non-ammonia bleach, which is going to be with a new color, and there still is a mask with Vibrochrome bleach, which is going to be with mask. But again, remembering the fact that the bond builder is built in when we're looking at the fact of working with the Progress and the Liberty, and that's with the hair protective booster. So that's where you're going to find the strengthening and the support that you require for that extra lightening. So it allows you to get more levels of lift, but the hair to feel incredible and to feel strong and supported. Our last one that we'll go over today is the fact of looking at finest pigments. Finest pigments is an incredible support when we think about the fact of where we want to look at color correction. Of course, you can use this in any way that you want, but this is a direct color, so it's more of a stain for the hair. So if you had lightened hair and you wanted to go darker, this could be your first starting place to put on the hair, and that's going to kind of allow the pigment to be, kind of sitting in the first place and then going through with your color over top. So that's going to be a great way to look at this. When we open this up, what you're going to find is you're going to find the fact that you have a 3 all the way to 9. So then we look below and you have ash, pearl, sand, golden, copper, red, and mahogany. So with this, when we look at all of these, we don't actually have an ash 5, 6, and 7. We just have one ash, but it's telling you when it's highlighted that that's where the strength of the ash sits at is a level 7. The pearl, the strength is a D, which is a decolorized. When we think of sand, again, a 7, and golden 8. So it's more showing you what it looks like on each of those shades, not that there's 3 options. So again, this is very much like a top coat that you can use, and it can be mixed with any of these naturals, or they can be used on their own. So if you were going to be like repigmentizing, then you may want to use, coppers, reds, and that's going to help kind of like put that grounding in before. But you could also use it as a top coat, and you can even use this for toning or gentle gray blending. This is going to sit in a very, very high natural, positioning, and all of the pigments themselves are coming from natural resources. So it is going to be more like a spa experience where it smells beautiful with rose oil, and it makes the hair feel incredibly soft and shiny, but also going to give dimension. So another support for you depending on what you're needing. But I would say generally I'm looking at it for the support when you're thinking of, your color, your tint backs, color correction, but of course as a top coat and a conditioning color. So there you have it with all of the different families. And I'd love to hear if you have any questions or if there's anything that you wanted me to go further in depth into. So you can unmute yourself, or else you can, of course, work in the group chat. How do you use finest pigments for gray coverage? Perfect. So it actually cannot give you solid gray coverage. It's going to be very, very gentle blending. I use this just because it's kind of an easy thing to say. It's not a henna, but when you think about how hennas work, or there used to be a line called like cellophanes, it's kind of sitting more like that. Like it really is just a top coat that's going to be, kind of keeping that super shiny finish, but it's going to give some pigment. And a lot of times what I like to do with it is if you take the color and you put it on like a tissue paper or a cotton ball, you'll kind of see what that color is going to look like. But it's almost like literally like a coating on it, but it doesn't really go in very deep. So it's not really coverage, but it can kind of give a little bit of blending and just make it not as intense. So a new color bleach, sure, absolutely. So a new color bleach, being non-ammonia, is not designed to go on scalp. It is a blue baseline, and one of the things that I love about working with a non-ammonia bleach, and this is what it looks like, is the non-ammonia bleach itself is going to be the fact that when it's lightening, it doesn't bring out as much of the unwanted pigment that we often see. So when we're using an ammonia, a lot of times the unwanted pigment is very exposed. So you see a fair bit of red, you see a fair bit of copper or orange, or you see the golden yellow. Whereas when you use the non-ammonia, oftentimes you feel like you don't have to tone, or you don't need as much control because of the way that it's lifting. So this is an incredible support. You do get, there are people that just absolutely adore and love to use this, and this is their go-to, but it is not going to give you the 9 levels of lift. It's sitting more in that 7 to 8 levels of lift. But again, it is a beautiful support and an incredible finish. And it is amazing to have a bleach that doesn't have ammonia in it. When I choose mask light, when would I choose mask lightener instead of Century of Light? Okay, awesome question. So a lot of people have their own personal preferences. Just as I mentioned, some people love a new color bleach. When we launched Century of Light, we weren't able to launch it in every single country at once, because every country approves new products in different ways. So what we basically did was, when we launched it, we sort of launched in the ones that had approved, the ingredients and allowed them to be into the countries. So we didn't want to take the Mask with Fiberchrome bleach out, and so we kept it. I think what people find is some people like to work with a bleach that does not have a violet base, because a violet base, when it's sitting in a foil, does alter the way it visually looks to our eye. So it can be harder to tell if the color, this is just what I've heard, like it's harder to tell when the color is the lightness that you want. So some people just want like a bleach that has no pigment to it, so it makes it easier for them to see. Personally, from my perspective, I would want to go with the Century of Light, because I would want the hair protective booster, the bond builder, in my bleach and in my lightening. And the price point is almost exactly the same. So again, it's just a personal preference, and some people just love and adore Mask with Fiberchrome bleach or mask bleach, and they don't want to change. And then there's people that appreciate the fact of having the bond builder in. So there's not really a time that I would use it, because it's not a cost savings. And I just think of the fact, if I have that technology to have the bond builder, I'd want to use that in my bleaches. So that's going to be kind of my personal opinion. And I think that it exists, again, because there's people that love it, and it didn't get into all of the countries, overnight. So it still has a demand. So there's no point in discontinuing it, but it's not kind of cutting edge for technology for us, if that makes any sense. Can finest pigments in the clear gloss be used alone for a glossing service? Absolutely, yes. And that's what's an incredible support. And so again, thinking of the fact, if you have people that are prone to fading, it can be a beautiful thing that makes the hair feel and look so shiny with great control, but at the same time, it is going to give you that extra shine and softness. And keeping in mind too, like there's the ash in the finest pigments I love, because okay, you're doing a color correction, let's say, and the hair porosity is starting to feel kind of not ideal. It's like it's been through a lot of different services. When you use the finest pigments, all you're doing is you're just using this on its own. You're not mixing this with an activator. So it is going to be the most gentle service possible. And that means that if the hair is wanting to spit color out, this can be that top coat that it's either a gloss or with another shade that helps give you the control or the vibrancy you need without adding the activator to it. So that is something where I feel like it can be such an incredible support for you in what you're needing. You're newish to color. Currently, you have mask and view, and you're having trouble with gray coverage for your 75% or higher. Do you think a new color is worth the investment? Okay, thank you, Shannon. Great question. So as I touched on, I truly believe that you should be able to get gray coverage on any color line that you're wanting to use. So a new color is going to give a different finish, but I'd want to feel like I could find a way too for you to get the gray coverage you need with Mask with Fiberchrome. So with Mask with Fiberchrome, sometimes I wonder what the scenarios are that you're having the gray coverage with. So it may mean that you need to go with the double natural if you're not already going there. It may also mean that you may need to go a tiny bit darker. Because again, sometimes with gray coverage, what happens is that we forget how dark the person's hair is because of the gray. And so we start treating it like it's something lighter than it is. So that could be something. The other thing is that depending on the texture, sometimes changing our application can make a difference. So I'm a little apprehensive to give you a demonstration because I'm about due for coverage myself, but I'll lean back a little bit. But what you basically would do is you could apply the color almost more coming down in this way. So doing it on both sides of the hair. But why is that? If sometimes I do here and I'm flipping the hair up and then I'm flipping it down, I'm pulling the hair out of the color mixture, which then those curly, wiry, coarse textured hairs are not getting, put on. Sometimes you'll even hear people say they put like perm papers. So thinking of if the hair is sitting with the direction that it wants to go in, you're going to get the best results for gray coverage. So that sometimes the application can make a difference. Okay, we found that leaving on the full processing time with a processing cap helped. Yeah, but for the stubborn hair, yes. So absolutely. And of course, knowing what products people are using on their hair, so that they're not getting something that's building up as a residue. So if you're ever putting a cap on, you can put a cap on, but maybe just don't make sure that we always say like a front door and a back door. Like you need to kind of have ventilation with it. You also can use heat with Mask with Fiberchrome. And so if that's what's needed. So I often think of the fact that, when you have these few clients, they're probably just tricky gray coverage scenarios regardless of what line, and it's just trying to find out what is your best scenario. If you were to go to a new color as a support, you may absolutely love it, but keep in mind that with a new color, you have to what's called encase all of the hair. So ammonia being a gas means it evaporates, so it gives the ability to kind of expand maybe where the color isn't as much. Whereas a non-ammonia being water soluble, you need to kind of almost encase all of the hair with the coverage. So you're going to need almost more like a clay mask, which is incredible, but just thinking of the fact of that coverage has to be a little denser and thicker. But again, with resistant gray, that's probably the way that you're going to need it. My hair being super fine, it's like I can pretty well almost use anything and it can get great coverage. I can use any activator, it doesn't matter, because my hair is just like that kind of hair. And then you have the opposite hair that just is so resistant. So thinking of, are you using the double natural? Like you said, maybe you're keeping the heat in. Are you using heat? How is the application, keeping it flat so that it's not being lifted up so that the gray is kind of, being exposed. I think that's something that could be great. Courtney, the tabs in the view colors and their boxes, are those underlying, the tabs in the view colors in their boxes, are those the underlying pigments in the colors? Okay, Joy, sorry, I'm trying to understand your question. Or Courtney, sorry. The underlying pigments, the view colors are what's in the tube. So if it's a 721, it's a level 7, and then it's a violet ash. So which underlying pigment, sorry, if you don't mind like re-asking the question or helping me, I'm not sure if I'm totally understanding what your question is. Oh, I see what you're saying. When the tabs are blue or green. No, not necessarily. Like they're a way to determine the difference in the families, but it's not necessarily like that there's green or blue in that. No, not necessarily. So okay, now I got you. And sorry, I don't actually have my swatch book here. I gave it away earlier this week, so I will have to get a new one. But I know what you're saying. So like each of the families has a different color tab, so that's not necessarily aligning, because I think like some of the naturals are like a green, and it's not that it's underlying green. So it's pretty well true to how mask sits. And if okay, so the login that you guys used is my phone number. So if you want me to email you, I have a swatch chart, like the color wheel, like in Mask with Vibrochrome, that I can send you that will show you their positioning. It's going to sit pretty well exactly how this sits, but it is kind of nice to see with the amethyst and the steel and the quartz. So you can text me your email, and then I'll be able to send you that that wheel to kind of help with that. But now I understand, and sorry for confusing. Like the tabs are a blue or green. Yeah, exactly. Right. So yeah, I'll just text me your email so that I can send it to you. But yeah, what you're going to find is that they're going to sit more similar to how to how view and mask are going to sit more similar to each other in the color wheel. And I do have a color wheel in an email form that I can send to you guys for sure. So yeah, hopefully that helps. And hopefully you guys are enjoying view as much as I am too. Any other questions that you guys have this morning? Awesome. So with that, what I'll go ahead and do is I'm going to stop the recording. It's been great to have you guys here with me. I will stay on for more questions, but I'll go ahead and stop the recording. And if there's anything that you need at all, again, the login is my phone number. So it's a great and easy way for you to get a hold of me. And I hope that you guys have a really awesome day and soon into the weekend. And thank you so much for joining. So pretty well almost every Friday, I have a different Zoom topic that I'm covering. And just like what you guys have done here, which is amazing, is, by reaching out with different questions, it ensures you get the information you need. So it's great when you guys have questions and are able to be interactive with me. It really is a pleasure. So thank you again, and I'll stop the recording, but I will stay here with you.